There's a moment in every human life when you first realize that words on a page are not just marks, they're voices from the past, reaching forward through time to speak directly to you. But who made that possible? Who was the first person to look at wet clay and think, I can trap a thought here. I can make this moment permanent. I can send my voice into tomorrow, next year, a century from now, long after I'm dust? Tonight you're going to meet them. You're about to walk through the gates of Uruk, the first true city in human history. Not the first settlement. Not the first village. The first place where everything that defines civilization as we know it emerged in one location. Writing, law, organized religion, specialized labor, monumental architecture, urban planning, taxation, bureaucracy, and the beautiful, complicated idea that thousands of strangers can live together in peace because of systems larger than any individual. This is not myth. This is not legend. This is 3100 BC, and 40,000 people are living inside walls that stretch for 6 miles, in a place that shouldn't exist, built on mud in a river valley with no stone, no timber, no metal, nothing but water, clay, and human ambition. If you've ever written your name, signed a contract, followed a law, walked a city street, or believed that tomorrow will come because systems will hold, you are living in the world Uruk invented. This is CHRONOS. We don't just tell history. We take you there. Tonight, you'll spend 24 hours in the first city on Earth. You'll feel the heat of the Mesopotamian sun on your skin. You'll smell the barley bread baking in clay ovens. You'll hear the first words ever written being scratched into wet tablets. You'll watch priests perform rituals to gods whose names are older than any empire. You'll see justice administered, trades negotiated, marriages arranged, and the intricate machinery of civilization functioning for the very first time. And when the sun sets over Uruk's ziggurat, you'll understand something profound, that every city you've ever known, every law you've ever followed, every word you've ever written, it all started here, in the mud, 5,000 years ago. The gates are opening. Let's walk through them together. You stand at the northern gate as the sun climbs over the plain. The air already carries heat, dry, clean, not yet oppressive. The gate itself is massive, 2 wooden doors reinforced with bronze bands, each door 15 feet tall, hung on pivots set into stone bases imported from the mountains 100 miles away. The wood is cedar from Lebanon, brought down the Euphrates on boats that took months to make the journey. Everything here is imported. This land has mud and water and ingenuity, but little else. The guards flanking the gate wear leather skirts and copper helmets that gleam in the early light. They carry spears with stone points. Bronze is still too expensive for common weapons. They watch the traffic but do not stop it. There are no walls between city and countryside in the way later civilizations will build them. The walls of Uruk are not primarily defensive. They are organizational. They mark where the city begins, where law applies, where the temple's authority reaches. You pass through. The street is 15 feet wide, packed earth and crushed pottery shards that provide drainage and solid footing. Buildings press close on both sides, mud brick walls, flat roofs, small windows set high to keep out heat. The architecture is dense, practical, built for a climate where shade is survival. The street curves gently, following the contour of the land, avoiding the low areas that flood when the rivers rise. The smell hits you first. Bread baking, smoke from cooking fires, human waste from the drainage channels that run along the street edges, the sharp tang of bitumen used to waterproof walls and seal the massive jars used for grain storage. Underneath it all, the smell of the river, water heavy with silt, carrying the richness of the mountains upstream. People fill the street. Farmers in simple linen kilts, their skin dark from sun, carrying baskets of barley on their shoulders. Women balancing water jars on their heads, moving with the practiced grace that comes from doing this task since childhood. Children darting between legs, chasing a leather ball stitched with sinew. A man leading a donkey loaded with date palm fronds, calling out warnings as he navigates the crowd. You move with the flow, deeper into the city. The houses you pass are single-story, occasionally 2, built around central courtyards open to the sky. The courtyards provide light, air circulation, and space for daily work. You glimpse through an open door, a woman grinding barley on a stone quern, the rhythmic scrape of stone on stone, her hands moving with automatic precision. Two children sit nearby, shaping clay into small figurines, animals, people, objects whose purpose you cannot guess. In another courtyard, a man works a potter's wheel, his feet pumping a wooden treadle that spins the clay disc. His hands shape a jar with practiced speed, the walls rising, curving, forming a vessel that will hold oil or grain or water. The wheel is one of humanity's great inventions, and here it is, in ordinary use, making ordinary objects for ordinary life. You reach a wider plaza where the street opens into a market. This is not yet the organized marketplace of later cities, with permanent stalls and assigned spaces. Instead, sellers spread reed mats on the ground and arrange their goods: vegetables, dried fish, clay lamps, woven baskets, bolts of linen, copper tools. The transactions happen in a mix of barter and early currency, standardized weights of barley, small rings of silver for larger purchases. A woman examines linen, running it between her fingers, testing the weave. The seller watches, patient. They negotiate in Sumerian, a language that will be dead 3,000 years from now, spoken by no one, preserved only in clay tablets that scholars will spend lifetimes deciphering. But right now, it is alive, musical, clicking and flowing, the first language ever written down. You watch a transaction complete. The buyer produces a clay token from a small leather bag, hands it to the seller. The token is a simple clay shape, a cone, representing a specific measure of barley. The seller accepts it, adds it to a collection in his own bag. This is proto-money, abstracted value, the beginning of economics. Nearby, a scribe sits on a low stool, a basket of clay tablets beside him. He is perhaps 25 years old, clean-shaven, wearing a simple white kilt. His hands are stained with clay. Before him, two men are negotiating. One is selling a field. The other is buying. They need a record. The scribe takes a fresh tablet, clay mixed to the perfect consistency, soft enough to mark but firm enough to hold shape. He uses a stylus, a cut reed shaft, to press marks into the clay. The marks are not yet the elegant cuneiform that will develop over the next few centuries. These are pictograms, simplified drawings. A field is shown as a rectangle divided into sections. Barley is shown as a sheaf. Numbers are shown as circular impressions made by the stylus's rounded end. This is writing in its infancy. Not literature, not poetry, not even sentences. Just records. Accounting. Who owns what? Who owes whom? How much was delivered? But from this, from the simple need to remember transactions, will come everything else. Epic poems. Law codes. Letters. History itself. The scribe finishes. He reads the tablet aloud to the two men, translating the marks back into words, ensuring both parties agree. They do. He sets the tablet aside to dry in the sun. In a few days, it will be hard enough to last millennia. You move on, following the sound of hammering. The artisan quarter announces itself with noise, the ring of copper being worked, the rasp of saws cutting imported timber, the rhythmic thud of mallets shaping leather. The buildings here are workshops open to the street, allowing ventilation and visibility. Craftsmen want to be seen. Skill is reputation, and reputation is survival in a specialized economy. You stop at a coppersmith's workshop. The smith is bare-chested, his skin gleaming with sweat. Before him, a small clay furnace glows red. He works a bellows, leather bag connected to a reed tube, pumping air into the furnace, raising the temperature high enough to melt copper. The copper comes as ingots, imported from Oman or Anatolia, traded across vast distances. When the copper reaches molten state, the smith pours it into a mold, a carved stone form that will shape an axe head. The pour is precise, controlled. Too fast and bubbles form. Too slow, and the copper begins to solidify unevenly. He has done this thousands of times. The motion is automatic, perfect. While the copper cools, he works on a piece already cast, filing, grinding, sharpening the edge. The tools he uses are themselves copper, or hard stone or bronze. Copper mixed with tin, harder, more durable but expensive. Bronze is still rare. Most tools remain stone or copper. The Bronze Age is beginning, but it is not yet universal. Across the narrow street, a carpenter shapes a wooden beam. The timber is date palm, the only tree that grows abundantly in this region. It's fibrous, difficult to work, splits easily, but it's available. For better lumber, cedar, oak, pine, you must trade with the north, and that costs more than most can afford. The carpenter uses a copper adze, shaping the beam with precise, angled cuts. The beam will become part of a roof structure. Roofs here are flat, made of palm logs covered with woven reed mats, then sealed with layers of mud and bitumen. The roofs become living space, cool at night, used for sleeping, socializing, escaping the heat trapped in the rooms below. You notice, everywhere, the recycling of materials. A broken pot is ground into powder, mixed into new clay. A worn-out tool is melted down, recast. A collapsed wall's bricks are salvaged, reused. Nothing is wasted. This economy runs on scarcity, on the intelligent use of limited resources, on the creativity born from having less than you need. Further down, a weaver works a vertical loom, creating linen from flax fibers. The loom is simple, a wooden frame with weighted threads hanging vertical. She passes the horizontal thread through, beating it tight with a wooden comb, building the fabric row by row. The work is meditative, repetitive, skilled. A good weaver can produce fabric fine enough to be nearly transparent, valued as highly as gold in markets to the north. You follow a canal that cuts through the city. The canal is 15 feet wide, lined with fired brick, a luxury, but necessary to prevent erosion. The water flows gently, controlled by gates upstream, part of an irrigation system that transforms this region from desert into the most productive agricultural land on earth. Along the canal, women wash clothing, beating fabric against stones, rinsing in the slow current. Children play nearby, splashing, supervised by older siblings. A man fills 2 large jars, hanging them from a yoke across his shoulders, carrying water back to his household. Water is the city's lifeblood, and its management is the foundation of Uruk's power. The canal leads you toward the city center, toward the structures that dominate the skyline, the temple district. The Inanna district, the temple complex dedicated to Inanna, goddess of love, war, fertility, and political power, covers over 20 acres. It is not a single building but a complex of temples, courtyards, storerooms, and administrative buildings, all enclosed within its own walls. You approach the main temple. The platform it sits on is massive, 40 feet high, built from millions of mud bricks, faced with white gypsum plaster that reflects the sun like a second dawn. The ramp leading up is wide enough for processions, for cattle being led to sacrifice, for the entire city to witness rituals on festival days. The temple itself is unlike anything built before it. The walls are decorated with cone mosaics, thousands of clay cones, each painted red, black, or white, pressed into the wet plaster to create geometric patterns. The effect is dazzling, hypnotic, a display of labor and organization that announces, this place is sacred, powerful, supported by resources beyond any individual's wealth. You climb the ramp. The climb is deliberately long, gradually lifting you from the mundane world toward the divine realm. At the top, the temple entrance, 2 massive doors, cypress wood covered in copper sheeting, engraved with images of Inanna, the goddess shown as a woman with wings, standing on 2 lions, holding symbols of her power. Inside the temple is cool, dim, vast. The main hall is 60 feet long, its ceiling supported by columns decorated with more cone mosaics. At the far end, on a raised platform, the cult statue, Inanna herself, carved from imported stone, dressed in real fabric, adorned with gold jewelry, her eyes inlaid with lapis lazuli that seems to glow in the lamplight. Before the statue, offerings, dates, barley, bread, beer, oil, slaughtered animals. Priests move among them, arranging, inspecting, cataloging. Everything given to the goddess is recorded by scribes seated along the walls, their tablets capturing every transaction. The temple is not only a religious center. It is an economic engine, a bureaucracy, a government. The priests manage vast agricultural estates, thousands of acres worked by temple laborers. They store grain in massive warehouses, redistributing it as rations, wages, seed for next year's planting. They organize irrigation projects, assigning labor, coordinating work that requires hundreds of men digging canals, building dams, maintaining the infrastructure that keeps the fields productive. The high priestess, the N, holds political power equal to or greater than any secular leader. She speaks for the goddess, interprets divine will, sanctions laws, legitimizes rulers. Her word can raise an army or stop a war. She is chosen young, trained for years, and serves for life. You watch her now, presiding over a ritual. She is perhaps 40, dressed in elaborately woven wool, dyed with expensive colors, red from madder root, blue from woad, purple from murex shells imported from the Mediterranean coast. Her hair is long, braided with gold thread, held in place with a silver comb shaped like a crescent moon, Inanna symbol. She speaks in liturgical Sumerian, chanting hymns that are already ancient, passed down through generations of priests. The words are formal, archaic, barely comprehensible to ordinary citizens, but the meaning is understood. The goddess is present, the goddess is pleased, the goddess will ensure the harvest, the health of the city, the prosperity of its people. The ritual involves libations, beer poured over the altar, absorbed into the stone. It involves incense, dried aromatic resins burned in bronze braziers, the smoke rising toward the ceiling, toward heaven. It involves music, drums, lyres, singers whose voices echo through the hall. When the ritual concludes, the priestess withdraws. You follow the crowd back down the ramp, into the city, into the afternoon heat. The sun is high now, relentless. The streets have emptied. Midday in summer is too hot for work. People retreat to their homes, to the shade of courtyards, to the coolness of rooms built with thick walls that hold the night's chill through the morning and release it slowly as the day progresses. You find shade in a public area, a small plaza with a few palm trees, their fronds providing dappled shadow. Others are here, old men talking, mothers nursing infants, children playing a game with stones and marked squares drawn in the dust. A water seller passes, calling his trade. He carries a large clay jar on his shoulder, a ladle hanging from his belt. For a small copper ring or a handful of barley, he'll pour you a cup. The water is cool, drawn from a deep well early this morning, kept in the jar's porous clay walls that allow slight evaporation, which cools the remaining water. It's a simple technology but effective. You drink. The water tastes of earth and minerals, slightly metallic, but clean. Clean water is another of Uruk's achievements. The city's wells are dug deep, lined with fired brick to prevent collapse and contamination. The drainage channels carry waste away from living areas, dumping it into irrigation canals that carry it to fields where it becomes fertilizer. Sanitation is not yet a science, but it is a practice, learned through observation and necessity. As the afternoon cools slightly, activity resumes. You walk toward the residential districts, toward the neighborhoods where ordinary citizens, not priests, not rulers, not wealthy merchants, live their lives. The houses are smaller here, more crowded. Families live in single rooms, sometimes two. The roofs are shared, neighbors sleeping side by side on hot nights, a community of proximity forced by density. You enter one house, invited by a gesture. The interior is dark, cool. The floor is packed earth, covered with reed mats. The walls are plastered, painted white to reflect the little light that enters. In one corner, a hearth, a clay platform where cooking fires are built. In another, storage jars, large pit hoy, half buried in the floor, holding barley, dates, lentils, oil. A woman is preparing the evening meal. She grinds barley that has been soaked overnight, forming a paste. She shapes the paste into flat discs, bread. She will bake them on the hearth's hot stones. Beside her, a clay pot simmers, lentils and onions, flavored with garlic and coriander. This is a typical meal. Meat is rare, reserved for festivals. The diet is grain, legumes, vegetables, dates, occasional fish. Her husband returns from the fields. He is a farmer, working land owned by the temple, paid in rations. He washes his hands and feet in a basin by the door, removing the day's dust. His body is lean, hardened by labor. His hands are calloused, his skin weathered. He sits, and she brings him beer, thick, nutritious, made from fermented barley. It is more food than intoxicant, a calorie source, a safe alternative to water that might be contaminated. They eat in silence, functional, efficient. When the meal ends, he goes to the roof. She remains below, cleaning, preparing for tomorrow. This is life. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. Not glamorous. Not dramatic. But sustainable, organized, part of a system that allows 40,000 people to live together, to survive, to occasionally thrive. Evening settles over Uruk. The sun sinks toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red and purple. The city's sounds shift, the work noises fade, replaced by conversations, laughter, music. You walk through a different district now, wealthier, where merchants and administrators live. The houses are larger, 2 stories, built around spacious courtyards with gardens, date palms, pomegranate trees, herbs. The walls are decorated with cone mosaics, imitations of the temple's grandeur, scaled down but impressive. Through an open door, you glimpse a dining scene. The family reclines on cushions around a low table. The meal is elaborate: roasted mutton, fish grilled with leeks, bread made from wheat instead of barley, dates stuffed with nuts, pastries sweetened with honey. Wine is served, imported from the northern hills, expensive, a luxury that marks status. The head of household is a temple administrator, a man who manages grain distributions, who coordinates labor assignments, who reports to the priests who report to the high priestess. He is educated, can read and write, a skill possessed by perhaps 1 in 100 citizens. His sons are being trained as scribes, learning the hundreds of symbols required to write Sumerian, memorizing the complex grammar, practicing on clay tablets that will be smoothed and reused hundreds of times before their education is complete. His daughters are being trained differently, in household management, weaving, music. They will marry into other administrator families, strengthening social networks, binding the elite together through kinship. Marriage is political, economic, a contract negotiated by families, recorded by scribes, sanctioned by the temple. You continue walking as darkness falls. Night in Uruk is not silent. The streets remain active, lit by oil lamps carried by pedestrians, by torches mounted at intersections. Guards patrol, men employed by the temple, armed with spears and clubs, maintaining order. Crime exists but is punished severely. A thief caught stealing grain might lose a hand. A man who assaults another pays compensation determined by a council of elders who interpret customary law, not yet codified like Hammurabi's laws will be centuries later, but functioning, consistent, understood. You find yourself at a tavern, a large room open to the street, benches and tables, a counter where a woman serves beer from massive jars. Taverns are common, social centers, where men gather after dark to drink, talk, play games. The atmosphere is relaxed, convivial. Songs are sung, work songs, love songs, hymns to Inanna. In one corner, a game is being played, a board marked with squares, pieces made from stone and clay, 2 men moving them according to rules that look like early chess or backgammon. They play for copper rings, small stakes, the game itself more important than the wager. At another table, a merchant from Ur tells stories of his travels. Tales of cities to the south, of ships that sail the Persian Gulf, of islands where divers bring up pearls, of mountains where copper is mined from veins visible on the surface. His audience listens, fascinated, hungry for information about the world beyond Uruk's walls. You step back into the street. The moon is rising, nearly full, bright enough to cast shadows. The moon is sacred here, associated with Nana, the moon god, whose temple rises in Ur. Time itself is measured by the moon, months are lunar cycles. The year begins with the first new moon after the spring equinox. You walk toward the ziggurat, the massive stepped pyramid that dominates Uruk's skyline. It is even more impressive at night, its white plaster glowing in the moonlight, a man-made mountain, a stairway between earth and heaven. You stand at the base of the ziggurat as midnight approaches. The structure rises above you, tier upon tier, culminating in a small temple at the summit where the gods are believed to descend, where heaven and earth touch. 5,000 years from now, this ziggurat will be ruins. Archaeologists will dig through its layers, finding pottery shards and clay tablets, reconstructing what it looked like, how it functioned, what it meant. But right now, in this moment, it is whole, functional, sacred. You have walked through 24 hours in Uruk. You have seen the first writing, the first monumental architecture, the first organized religion, the first complex economy, the first urban planning. You have watched the birth of civilization, not as myth, not as theory, but as lived experience. Everything that came after, Babylon, Athens, Rome, every city that ever rose, was built on foundations laid here, in the mud, by people who had no blueprint, no precedent, no model to follow. They invented it. They wrote it down. They made it work. The cities you live in, the laws you follow, the words you write, the systems you trust, they all trace back to this place, to these people, to this moment when humanity decided that permanence was possible, that strangers could cooperate, that mud and water and ambition could build something that would outlast any individual life. Uruk fell, eventually. The rivers shifted. The irrigation systems failed. The population dispersed. By the time of Christ, Uruk was abandoned, buried, forgotten. But what Uruk created, writing, cities, law, administration, the very idea of civilization, that never died. It spread, evolved, transformed, but it endured. Every time you sign your name, you are using technology invented here. Every time you follow a law, you are participating in systems designed here. Every time you trust that tomorrow will come because structures will hold, you are living in the world Uruk made. The mud bricks crumbled. The words remained. And perhaps that is the deepest truth, that ideas are more durable than stone, that systems outlive the people who built them, that what we write survives what we build. The moon sets. The city sleeps. But the dream continues. Uruk invented permanence, and permanence, it turns out, is not a place. It is a promise. If this journey moved you, if you felt the heat of the sun and the weight of history and the strange, profound connection between that first city and every city you've ever known, leave a like below. Subscribe to walk with us through more worlds that shaped your own. Share this with someone who needs to remember that everything we have was once impossible, was once invented, was once new. This is CHRONOS. We don't just tell history. We take you there.